Hey Frank, how you doing?
I'm doing
Jim
good. How you
Planner
doing?
here. Well, for our audience today, we're going to discuss situational analysis, which we both think is really important. We've seen it, in our past, and we've seen it bring benefits to companies. But first, tell you a little bit about both of us. I used to work for Gartner, and before that, American Express. Before that, Northwestern Mutual Life, all of which working with clients, working with advanced technology. And Frank, who has been in and out of, relationship with Gartner and Aragon Research, another company I work for, has always been, the father of analytics for me. So I'd like Frank to introduce himself and tell us a little about him, and we'll get into discussing situational analysis.
Well, thanks, Jim. Yeah, I've actually been around a long time, and I've been fortunate that I don't have as much gray hair as most of my colleagues. But my background is mainly in analytic capabilities for business analysis. That's where I focused over the years. And it includes having both been a line manager in IT for almost 20 years, and then being a consultant, and especially spending a lot of time in business analysis, particularly on the strategic and tactical levels. I think that's very important. The operational levels are well known on how you would optimize and deal with them. Not a lot of known is about the external environment and so on. And I took a major in my MBA on environmental scanning and analysis. And I did things like economic forecasting and need for power analysis and stuff like that. So I have an analytical background mainly, and sometimes that works to my advantage, and sometimes that works against me. So
Yeah, and you're a
benefit of both.
CEO of a big consulting firm that deals with this. So, why is this so important, and why is it important now to do situational analysis? I mean, we see what's happening in the world now. Why spend more time on planning when you're having to react to all this change?
Yeah, it's a fair question to ask now. We always say, oh, well, we're concerned with dynamic change. But the reality is, what used to take 25 to 30 years to roll out a technology now takes 5. And what we see in this is a lot of it is due to the fact that the technologies that we're rolling out now tend to be more information and IT based. And so taking only 5 years increases the dramatics of the changes that are going on, especially in the external environment. Secondly, you have a much more international set of relationships that's developed over the last 50 to 60 years, especially in supply chains, and especially in how you do development and who has what minerals and so on and so forth, as we see in a lot of discussions about economic conditions today. So it's very important to understand that we need to understand the external environment better. So the first thing we did was to separate the landscape analysis from SWOT, so you're not crowded by the SWOT decisions that you have to make. Also, SWOT is also used in a lot of different circumstances, not just in doing the strategic analysis.
So it's strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats is an important thing to do, but you've got to put it in context, because there are a lot of risks out there for organizations, geopolitical risks, environmental risks, competitor risks that organizations have to deal with. So that makes situational analysis important, at least in my mind. And I worked for a paranoid company that did that all the time.
Well, you're correct on this, absolutely, because both on the vertical and horizontal scales, this thing has become dramatic. And what it has done, which I find even more interesting, is if you do a good job at your situation analysis, then you are positioned to take care of the problems of strategic alignment inside of most organizations. Recent studies have shown that the strategic direction breaks down actually at the tactical level, and hence it breaks down also operationally. However, operationally is at the edge of the corporation, and it usually responds better to changes that are going outside that it knows immediately, like adding robotics and AI and stuff like that. And the strategy then picks it up backwards. I mean, I've run into this in IT all my life. It was client server, it was relational databases, whatever it was. It generally bubbled in from the bottom. And then management said, oh my God, we need to do something about this because our competitors might, or the market might, or there'll be social changes. And all of a sudden they're looking at the external environment.
So you're switching the flow from reactive to proactive and connected. So you have your strategy connect to your tactics, connected to your operations. So you have top management, middle management, and the people at the bottom that are trying to get her done, all linked together.
You're right. I actually did a talk one time some years ago called the middle squeeze, basically. It's how tactical perspective is being squeezed by the direction from the top and the actual things that are going on the bottom and the changes that they're making. And nobody's addressing the middle. When I've done research on tactical planning and tactical analysis, there's not a whole lot. It just says that, oh, the tactical part, the organization, and how it's structured should respond to this. And in the tactical part, and I think McKinsey did a really nice study of this, they just said, we have no idea. They don't tell us how we relate to them, so we're going to do what we need to do to make the operation work. So they're actually focused on supporting the operations. And so you have this big breakdown. So you've lost the relationship between the external environment, strategy, and tactics.
Right. So that sounds like to me that, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt that could be generated by not doing situational analysis. What are the positive benefits of being able to do situational analysis? How much work is involved, and what do I get for it? I want to know what I get.
Well, that's been what I would call the bugaboo historically about doing landscape analysis. When I first did this, which was quite a few years ago, you had to do a tremendous amount of what I would call hand research. That is, I had to go out to magazines, and I had to go to articles, I had to go to clipping services. It was all manual. And then we got the internet. So it became doing stuff with Google queries, which then pointed you to a website, which then you had to go read all the papers and the articles again, and you had to extract the information. You had to create like pestle category. And this took several months sometimes. I can do this now in one day with GenAI.
Wow.
Yeah, that is dramatic. So the cost has gone down dramatically of acquiring the knowledge that you need to do the external analysis. And if you separate out the landscape, you can get the landscape done very quickly. You can see what the issues are actually between landscape perspectives, like what social trends impact technology, what technology impacts social trends back, because you have both directions on this. So you need a horizontal analysis. Then you need a vertical analysis connecting that to what your strategic perspective is. And with that, you connect in your SWOT analysis of your weaknesses and strengths and so on.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is the cost is going down
dramatically. Yes.
And AI is the supercharger for this.
Exactly.
So you need to do it just to protect yourself, but there sounds like there's some positive benefits.
Yes.
Getting to the market early.
Exactly. You have more of an opportunity to focus on things. For example, you can use the same effort that you put into the situation analysis, particularly the landscape, to help you with the market competitive and the technology trends that are going on that are handled separately. And you generally develop what I would call a bespoke version of SWOT that deals with that. The most common use of SWOT today you will see is in marketing. And it accesses a perspective of the external environment and that supports marketing, not the entire organization. So you have these two views. You have the focus view and you have the generic view that you're using for the whole corporation. And you can do that very inexpensively now. And the benefit is you can directly pinpoint and have solution to pinpoint opportunities here. That's very important. We didn't have that in the past. They were very broad.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you can take things that are happening on the ground operationally, events, patterns, and you can quickly plug those changes, and see how it affects this situational analysis and vice versa to not overreact or react wrongly. So if you're observing, orienting, analyzing, taking actions, and using a feedback loop, you now have the power and speed to do it, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, good point. Let me give you a really premier example of this real quick. This I got from Walter Isaacson's book on Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, when he started the Fremont plant, had announced he was going to have a fully automated plant. So they automated from beginning to end the assembly line. And he was producing about, I think they said 500 cars per month, per week. And you have to check the numbers on this. He needed to produce 10 times that, 5,000 to break even. So he went and he looked at what was going on the line, and he realized that, why do we have a robot here? A human can do this faster and better. And so he came up with what he calls the algorithm. First, you go in and document what you have. Well, he knew what a manufacturing process was like. The second thing you do is get rid of all the steps you don't need. The third thing you do is you optimize the steps that are left. And the fourth thing to do is you adapt them to fit the situation if you have to modify them. And then you add the robots. And one of the comments of the employee said, one day they walked out to the parking lot and they couldn't believe the number of robots that were sitting out there.
Wow.
That tells you a lot. Now, this is a known technique in business process management for at least 25 and 30 years. Had he used the advantage of today's AI, he would have learned that immediately. When he applied this with SpaceX, it worked perfectly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great,
well-performing, yeah.
Well, that's a great story, and it's kind of encouraging to me, since I have a business process background, that the disciplines and the methodologies still work.
We've been doing it right.
By accident.
By accident or intent, I'm not sure. But it tells you that because it's so easy to get the information today and so productive, the value has increased dramatically to a business.
Okay. So what you're saying, there's benefits in automating and using robots and using bots and, agentic AI. Take those, but take those with a strategy and a plan that gives a context for doing it right. Otherwise, you're going to waste a lot of time and effort. You're not going to be able to respond. You'll be brittle, is what I'm hearing. So
exactly.
Yeah,
what happens when you do something like Elon Musk did is you also stumble on the tactical part. Mm-hmm. Because he didn't know what the tactical structure should be to make all that happen and connect them to what his objective was originally, which is to have a fully automated plant. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? So this is what McKinsey found out when they were looking at how do you do alignment and how important it is to be able to align with what you're finding out in the external environment. And you need to do a much better job of situation analysis so that when you drive it down, you get the results you expect.
Okay, so we've identified one critical mistake, not having strategic linked with tactical, linked with operational. Are there any other critical mistakes that companies can make when they're doing this situational analysis? I mean, is it not looking at enough data points?
You and I both know what's happened to companies which have decided they didn't have to do this work, they could copy from somebody else. We have lots of examples. I remember you mentioned examples of IBM and the PC and how they decided to ignore the tactical aspect of this and to ignore the situation, which they would have learned very quickly because of all these people are putting together their own PCs by hand. They would have known that all these parts are available. Instead, it had to be in-house. When Ford introduced the Edsel, the other companies looked and said, wow, we have to come up with something competitive to that. They didn't even do their own analysis. Yeah, and I remember there was one senior executive that I read about who said, why should we do a study when Ford already did that? And if they think that this car is necessary, we better be prepared with the competitive thing. Really? How about doing your own competitive analysis using situation analysis?
So they invested a lot of money to come up with, an alternative to the Edsel, which was an absolute bomb, as I remember.
It was. It was one of the better disasters out there. And if you look, there are plenty of disasters, and a lot of them come from not understanding what the implications are, and you only understand that through situation analysis.
Right.
And
another danger is copying somebody else's plan.
Yes. Yep.
I've had
a lot of examples of that.
Yeah, I personally believe that that's what a lot of the big consulting companies do. They get a pattern and they take a vacuum cleaner to your pocketbook and they have a big name. And instead of doing the hard work that you should do yourself, because you know your industry better than they do, you can do this yourself now. You don't need these people that are, schmoozing your executives on the golf course. So
the famous quote that I heard one time from a very senior government official overseas was, "Nobody got fired for using McKinsey."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I've had to clean up after them three
You got
times.
it. I've been there. I bet, particularly knowledge management, because, there are certain firms that made claims in the 90s at knowledge management that were not correct. They're absolutely
Okay.
not correct. And we had good experience at that, and we had a hard time explaining to companies that what these larger organizations were doing was not appropriate for what they needed.
Okay. So we've got two dangers: disconnection, top to bottom, copycat. Okay, and then of course there's dangers in overpaying for this. Are there any other dangers?
It's not so much a danger, but an advantage. Right now it's a risk because this is something you and I have chatted about. It's the tentacle approach to when you have a synergy amongst technology components. We had this in business intelligence, and eventually all the different components came together to be called business intelligence. This is what's going on in AI right now. You have all these different things like AI agents, you have AI workflows, you have GenAI, and then you have the methodologies that people have and so on. These things are coming together into an integrated approach.
Yeah, and mining. So you got all these tributaries coming together.
So the risk is that you get on one horse and you should be on another horse. That's usually, and of course companies are usually very aware of stuff like this. You have to be careful which horse you choose to ride as you're going into this wave. Plus, some AI technologies are well developed and they're in a box. Like if you want to recognize license plates, it's there. You want to recognize faces, it's there. But if you want to apply it to your processes, well, that's not there, nor is there good methodologies for that. They know where you should use robotics. How do they know this? The people who make robots tell you.
Right. So are there any AI applications to management? Having a management cockpit that watches, lets management know, or even makes adjustments on the fly?
Yes, I was looking at a product today which I've had some relationship with because I design algorithms for them, and they were showing me how you could generate SWOT out of the type of data that we were gathering out of landscape analysis. It automatically generates SWOT. Not only that, it will generate gaps between them when you over a period of time, and we have analytics that will help enable that to be more accurate and more detailed and more correct. It's a set of analysis that does not involve excruciating detail of the properties of something down on the operational level, because you can't make the broader decisions when you get caught in the weeds like that. I think I mentioned to you one time, the analogy I use often is, you're in the jungle, you're about to go into a clearing, and there's lions there. So you got two choices. I could walk through the clearing and I can listen for the lions and hope I run fast. Or I could climb up a tree and see where the lions are. When you're working on the strategic and tactical level, you're in the tree.
Yeah.
That's very important to understand that. So you don't have the detail. You don't want to get caught in the detail.
Yeah, well, not only that, you think better when you're up in the tree overlooking it rather than somebody snapping at your behind.
That's right. You're more worried about survival then.
Yeah. And how good your tennis shoes, and are you faster than the guy next to you?
Yes, well, you have to be as fast as the guy next to you. Unless you're alone, then it's a problem.
So if you were going to bottom line situational analysis for somebody who, maybe interested in it, but they're not quite sure, how would you bottom line it in terms of, is this critical? Is this a critical thing to do? If you don't do it, it's going to, make you disappear faster. And companies are disappearing at a fast rate these days.
Yeah, see, that's a good point, because business continuity is critical to understanding where you think the conditions are coming from, and you only know that through a fairly extensive situation analysis, which was hard to do in the past because it was all manual. Now that it's automated, it's much easier to do, and it helps your business continuity. It also gives you the capability to adapt faster, because now you know that you have to align this with your operations, and you will look at how can I adapt my operations. And what you really want to do is keep things more coupled than integrated, because if it's coupled, it's flexible. If it's integrated, it's not. We knew this when we built these huge, massive applications years ago in computers.
Fantastic. It sounds like management's finally getting the ability to have an integrated cockpit It's not fly-by-wire yet, but it's approaching it. And it sounds like you could really help people with the situational analysis. It sounds like you have significant experience. My experience with it is lightweight compared to yours. Yeah. So how do people get a hold of you?
Well, they can contact me either personally through KCI_KnowledgeBiz, Frank at knowledgebiz.com, which is my company email address, or they can go to knowledgebiz.com, which is our website, and get an idea of how we provide both professional education, workshops on how to do this, what tools that we use, because we educate on the tools which we have to update almost on a regular basis because they're changing so fast. And we also have, three types of tools. One of them works with highly unstructured data. That's the LLMs and the ChatGPTs. Another one is the BI tools that work with highly structured data. But there's an in-between group that works with semi-structured data, like process names, organization names, and stuff like that. There are not many tools in that space. We know the tools and we use them. In fact, I saw a great demonstration.
Yeah, so you're saying that AI is changing very fast. I see that because I apply it to music and art. And it's changing so fast, and the integration of them is so fast. The number of vendors that are churning, some are disappearing, new ones are aggregating. So you can help them with that as well. And I'd really like to thank you for your time. I've learned a lot by listening here, and hopefully we'll do some more of these in the future if people like them. If they don't like them, we won't be back.
Well, yeah, we could talk a lot about strategic alignment and stuff like that, formulation of strategies, because we use tools for all that now. It's no more putting your finger to the wind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks, Frank. I appreciate it. You have yourself a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.